What's up, y'all? It's Ty. We're back with a Thinking Basketball banger. Shout out to him. The link to his channel will be down below in the description. How was Dirk so good? Now look, again, Dirk played before, like obviously at the end of his career I watched him, but I never really was super into it. I was young to the NBA when Dirk was in his prime. So I'm interested how Dirk was so good and so efficient, one of the best scorers of all time. Let's look at it. Let's talk about it. Shout out to Thinking Basketball. If y'all new here, smash that subscribe button.
This is game one of the 2011 Western Finals between the Mavs and the Thunder. Dallas took care of business in round one, then stunned the two-time defending champion Lakers in a sweep. They trail this one late in the second quarter when Dirk goes to work, drawing a double team, kicking it out so the ball can find an open shooter. A minute later, it's 4-on-4 in transition. Serge Ibaka sees the sharpshooting Jason Terry on the wing, and that's enough for Nowitzki to cut behind him for an old-fashioned three-point play.
Like, Dirk barely gets off the ground. It's crazy.
On the next possession, Dirk posts up Nick Collison, sets up the one-legged fade, and look at that soft touch.
You can't guard that. You
Now,
cannot
to
guard
start
that.
this game, the Thunder stuck the shot-blocking Ibaka on Nowitzki, but he had little effect on the 7-foot German's crazy high release.
You literally cannot block that shot. It's
The
impossible.
third, when Dirk came off this little screen, Ibaka panicked and fouled him on the jumper. They sent Serge to the bench and tried Durant on him next with a double team, and it was more tic-tac-toe for another three.
Man, Deshaun Stevenson. When I was growing up, I liked the Wizards with Gilbert Arenas anyways. That's when I was really young. Deshaun
After
Stevenson.
a few possessions where they went away from Nowitzki, they went back to
Deshaun,
him
man.
against Durant, who was too handsy, and it was more free throws.
Look
So
at Bill
the
Kennedy.
Thunder tried
Is that Bill
defense-
Kennedy? I think that is a young Bill Kennedy.
Specialist Thabo Sefolosha on Dirk, but he was so freaked out about his shot, it opened up the spin and a trip back to the line. Sefolosha gives up about 6 inches there, so OKC brings Kendrick Perkins
Look at this, man. This defensive attention's
to help
ridiculous.
near the rim, but that draws an erroneous 3-second call and gives Dirk yet another free throw at the charity stripe. The next time, Nowitzki just posts up and drops the little one-legger off the glass, and then when
Dirk's
the
just
Mavs
too
break
much.
out in transition, Dirk's version of a layup is a wide-open 10-footer. With the lead suddenly 11, they go back to Nowitzki on the outside. This time, OKC doubles on the spin, and we're right back to wide-open threes. Against 4 different defenders in just over
And look at all the different looks. Different defenders, different looks. It does not matter, simply put.
a quarter
Doesn't
of
matter.
play, Dirk set up or scored 31 of Dallas's 41 points to blow the game open in the best performance of a magical run toward the title. So was 2011 the one year he finally put everything together, or was Dirk good enough to be a championship centerpiece for that entire decade? Was he
Special,
really
man.
the best shooting big man in NBA history? And despite averaging fewer than 3 assists per game, at his peak, was he actually the best offensive player in the NBA?
I mean, you could run your offense through him, there's no doubt. Shout out to Thinking Basketball, the GOAT. These series are fantastic. Series are fantastic.
We remember him now as like this killer at the end of games.
Right,
Like,
yeah.
you know, like
Deadly killer.
closer,
Yeah.
right?
Is that Steve Nash drinking Hennessy?
That wasn't his personality at first. He had to overcome with a lot of hard work and like, you know, he grew into that.
It's easy to forget, but young Dirk Nowitzki was a physical marvel, a 7-foot unicorn with the fluidity and coordination of a wing. This is a giant man running pick and roll, spinning and hanging to kiss it off the
And he's a
glass.
lot more agile back then, too.
He could face up, fake that spin move into a twisting fadeaway, and this is some straight-up Michael Jordan appropriation from Dirk, who was probably the first 7-footer to move with such fluidity while attacking the basket. The hair was quite fluid, too. Look, when he was young, he was often compared to Larry Bird because of his outside shooting and possibly the hair, but Bird was incredibly nimble for a 6'9" player, And Dirk was even sturdier and more comfortable with the ball.
That's what I'm saying. Dirk's 7 feet tall and he's
perimeter.
moving smooth.
He's handling in transition, hesitates, and then flows downhill with the soft touch. Yet, fancy ball handling wasn't a part of Dirk's game at all. He just protected it well enough to drive or set up his shot. A few episodes back, we saw Reggie Miller curl off screens and score in the paint. And even at his size, Dirk could fly off these with authority. So he was enormous, but he could also come off these screens and fire because he was one of the best shooters ever. In the early
and I mean, just that catch and shoot ability is special.
2000s,
Get it
he
off.
took about
so tough to contest.
5 threes per game, making them at a healthy 39%. But Nowitzki actually took fewer of these over the years as he shaped his game around his mid-range shooting. Some of this was just a blind spot of the era, bypassing threes for less valuable long twos. But a lot of it was Dirk operating in his sweet spot where he could shoot right over just about anyone with an efficient attempt.
It's just like you literally cannot guard that.
Since mid-range shooting has been recorded, Nowitzki is the king of the long two, peaking at nearly 9% ahead of the league on over 8 attempts every 36 minutes. That was a nice improvement.
And look, long twos are not technically a good shot, but if you make them at this efficiency, it puts so much pressure on the defense.
From an already strong first half of the decade, and he hit even higher percentages late in his career on slightly less volume. That outside shooting was the foundation of his entire game, because back then, this was efficient half-court offense on demand because of his size and high release point. If defenders started crowding him to bother that shot, he'd go to the up fake for a blow-by. The next time they run the same play, Tim Duncan isn't quite as close to stop the drive, so Dirk pops one right over him. You'll see this sequence constantly with Nowitzki. In 2011,
because I mean, you have to load up on him. You have to. I mean, Pau Gasol is not guarding him.
He gets a little room to shoot over Pau Gasol, and a few minutes later, Pau crowds him to take away that shot.
This is clutch time too.
To drive, and then the incredible touch on the hook.
So tough.
Dirk's driving game was never about a big quickness edge. It was about teasing defenders with that shot, and then having the coordination to bring it home. I love this sequence from the 2002 playoffs where Kevin Garnett studies...
Not against my Wolves, okay? Not against the Wolves.
...him as he mesmerizes Rasho Nesterovic with a series of fakes before launching. Only to come back in the second half in the same situation against Garnett until he reacts to a possible shot and drives instead for the and one.
On KG, that's special, man, because KG's a great
Chris
defender.
Webber, Dirk uses the shot fake to draw free throws from about 17 feet away, and he killed defenders with this up and under move for his entire career.
And it's really not foul baiting. Like, it's not like he's, you know, he is drawing fouls, but it's not like today's Joel Embiid trying to foul bait.
Penetrators like Dwayne Wade or Michael Jordan shot a ton of freebies because they were impossible to stay in front of and exploded at the rim. But Dirk matched their free throw volume with his shot because opponents were so afraid of it. They were constantly lunging at him in a panic or whacking his arm while desperately trying to contest that unblockable mid-ranger. So even without a heavy driving game, Dirk was one of the most prolific foul drawers in playoff history.
It's just you got to stay down and live with him taking that shot. You got to realize he's probably going to make it, but...
And at 90%, that meant nearly automatic points.
But you could not put him at the line, man.
We saw something similar in episode 2 from Miller, only Dirk took more free throws than Reggie, probably because he could also bang around the basket with his size. And this is where that fluid movement really helped, because his defender is pulled out by his shot, and he could drive at him like an under-control wing. Because he was under control, he could turn and shoot over either shoulder from, like, anywhere.
And any angle, too. Like, he can lean back. It's
with defenders'
crazy.
heads, too. Freeing up little openings that are hard to see in real time. Sean Marion thinks Dirk is spinning into the fadeaway here, and that little lunge turns it into an open layup.
And he's just
the same thing happened in his legendary Game 7 against San Antonio in 2006, Where Bruce Bowen thought Dirk would spin into a jumper, he throws his hands up to contest, and Dirk keeps going and sends the game to OT with a 3-point play. And then again, 5 years later in Game 2 of the finals, tied at 93 in the final seconds, Dirk went to the same spin hesitation on Chris Bosh to steal the game.
Because, yeah, you got that. That's what I'm seeing a lot of. People overreact to that like fade, right? You got to contest it, but then he can blow right past you.
It works because Bosh is ready to contest the shot, and that throws him out of position, and Dirk's size and skill do the rest. Nowitzki's always had a post-up game because he could pivot into that high release point. And this is a really nice back down in spin in 2003 against the Spurs. But his post game wasn't quite as robust in the early 2000s as it would be later. Even though his shooting gradually improved, he always had that ridiculous shot making right over opponents.
So like that shot again I know he might make that at, let's say, a 43% clip, but it puts so much pressure on the defense.
He didn't always have the balance and sturdiness he would have later on some of these moves. He backs down the smaller Marion here, but is thrown off by turning into the contact. And in the mid-2000s, he developed a reputation for failing to really punish smaller defenders in the postseason. Against Steve Nash here, he's not entirely in control, and this is a really difficult shot. But by the
nowadays, they're going to call that a foul, though. They do. Maybe not in the playoffs, but in the regular season, that's for sure a foul.
End of the decade,
for sure
he was more deliberate about punishing switches in these situations. Dirk was never quick enough to blow by these smaller defenders, but he tightened his ball handling a little bit and added more to that post game, working with his mentor Holger Geschwindner to improve his lower body strength so he could back down smaller defenders and dictate the move he was going.
The most important thing is his footwork, in my opinion.
Look at how sturdy these actions are. Backing down a bigger defender, going to the up fake, and then falling back away. And he's completely balanced.
And the thing is, balanced, under control, and he makes it look so easy.
And in control the entire time. On the next trip, he has a smaller defender on him, works right to his sweet spot, and goes to the same move. That strength shows up on drives, too, where he can just power through contact for a dunk and back down bigger opponents while remaining perfectly under control to set up a fadeaway. It's almost,
and again, he makes it look so easy, but it's not an easy
age
shot.
Helped the game slow down for Dirk, especially in these high-pressure situations, posting up. And according to Synergy Tracking, from the middle of the 2000s to 2011, Dirk nearly doubled his post-up frequency while peaking in efficiency. And of course, he developed his one-legged fadeaway, one of the most unguardable signature moves in NBA history. Holger apparently wanted him to develop a hook shot, but the one-legger was a natural extension of Dirk's two-legged fall-away that he'd had for so many years. Only this version could have a quicker release, and he increased his body angle.
And I still feel like this is such a hard shot, but he makes it look so easy.
On that fade to make it harder to contest.
You can't contest that.
The off leg also acted like a shield to create additional space. It keeps Lamar Odom at bay here while
and it's not like he's really kicking out.
Ball over that other leg. And since he gravitated toward twisting off-balance shots, that extra lean was almost natural for him.
That's what I'm saying.
So natural that I actually found a random one-legger way back in 2001. He formally developed it years later with that improved strength and stability because he could take contact and stay balanced comfortably on one leg. He didn't actually use it a ton, but it was a key addition to his improved post-game over these years. For instance, he's cut off nicely here, but can pivot into this thing.
Like, it's literally perfect defense.
Unfair.
It's perfect defense.
Dirk was already a good playoff scorer in the early part of his career.
Really
But his
good.
improvements turned him into one of the best ever, with a 3-year peak of 29 points per 75, on efficiency 9% better than expected. So, we know Dirk was one of the great shooters and scorers the league has ever seen, but how much did that scoring actually help his teammates? And if he didn't run through 1,000 screens like Steph Curry, Was there another way he could help his teammates without racking up any assists?
And the thing for me is Dirk defensively, you know he's not going to be great. Like, you know that.
I'm trying to figure out how you're going to deal with him in the post if he goes in there. How you're going to find him in transition. All those things. You know, when he sets a screen, it's like a double screen on your guys because you got to hug him.
In the last episode, we saw the incredible power of Steve Nash's
Man, Steve
playmaking,
Nash's his passing was absurd.
which was a theme during the first season of Greatest Peaks with offensive engines like Michael Jordan and Magic Johnson. But Dirk wasn't an elite passer or even prolific ball handler who pressured defenses. Now, one of the reasons his assists were low was he could bypass teammates to shoot into double teams. And with his release point, these doubles didn't
it's literally he could get whatever shot he wants
bother him
himself.
as much. So it's not terrible to ignore shooters up top or in the corner if these are still high percentage shots. But a bigger reason for low assists is that he wouldn't anticipate passing openings on plays like this. Here's another example where he doesn't see this opening in time, but then San Antonio ends up sending a double, which creates late clock offense for a teammate. Dirk was always a
Look at Jet. Jet just stands there waiting for his opportunity.
pretty willing passer, especially against the double teaming defender. He's working up top. Chris Paul comes over to help, so he shoots it to a wide open Jason Kidd. This time he drives to set up that up fake move, runs right into Kobe Bryant, and Kidd is in his sight line, so he punishes the help.
That's a tough pass under pressure.
These are solid but reactionary plays. Duncan doubles, so Dirk looks for Duncan's man with a great delivery over the top.
That was a good
Some
pass.
of his best passes were actually these jump passes where a cutter runs into his line of sight on the shot. So on a play like this, he sees Shaq stepping up to help and slips it to his man. What he almost never did in these spots was manipulate the defense. The double comes. Now this defender needs to worry about the shooter or cutter, and Dirk sees that he takes the cutter, so a basic kick out is the fallback option.
I mean, that's a great
saw
shot,
this
though. Like,
earlier, where
there's no way we're going to hate on that.
Chandler's going to flash into position underneath, but the more basic play still leads to good offense. And I'm not sure I've ever seen him throw a lob pass to a vertical mismatch under the hoop in these spots, but even without advanced passing
It's
connections,
simple. Tyson Chandler's there for the offensive rebound.
his secondary reads, like a nice skip pass, still led to high percentage looks.
Great looks. You got
Here's
two
one where he
offensive
jab
rebounders there, too, if you
to
miss it.
score, then quickly slips a pass in, and that was tough to handle, but I love the idea.
I like the idea, but
Although
that's a difficult
Dirk wasn't
pass,
always
man.
crisp in his execution on some of his passes. The placement could be a little off, or the delivery could be a little slow.
Oh, my gosh.
Like on this after timeout play, where he's looking for a Chandler lob, and the pass is way too low, and it's deflected for a harder shot. So Dirk's on-ball playmaking helped his teammates a little bit, but he wasn't a volume playmaker with the ball who generated a layup line for his teammates. What Dirk did have was a presence away from the ball that made life easier for others. This was most notable as a screener, where his defender wanted to step out to slow down the ball, but also didn't want to
leave Dirk, yeah.
Dirk open to shoot from the outside. And the result could be plays like this, where the ball handler ends up with a red carpet to the basket. Here's one where Ibaka just Velcros himself to Dirk. A third defender needs to help, and I think it was a little breezy in the arena there. Sometimes
Yo, Deshaun Stevenson, are you
the
good?
fear of Nowitzki's pick and pop shooting could pull a defender right out of the way, and someone close the window, please.
Oh my gosh.
This kind of gravitational pull on defenders was present early in the decade. Relieving pressure for his guards to attack off his screens, they run him off a pick here first, and Garnett prioritizes Dirk over the ball, so Nick Van Exel ends up
You kind
with
of have
an
to in that
opening.
situation, though.
With
Kinda
big
have
men
to.
clinging to Nowitzki on the outside, an opposing shot blocker is removed from the paint. So pulling that big body out of the lane gave his teammates more space to drive into. Dirk usually played on teams with good spacing, where the paint wasn't completely clogged up. But he was also responsible for that spacing.
Exactly. Like, he's a big man that you have to account for.
By drawing defenders away from the basket. Remember, teams were worried about his outside shooting proficiency. So instead of the big man running back to the rim here, he finds Dirk and sticks to him while Dallas practices a layup drill. The benefits of stretch big men and spacing became commonplace across the league years later. But back in 2011, this was still a futuristic
Yeah, look at Lamar. Lamar is just staying glued to Dirk.
Setup. Here's a wing pick and roll with 3 shooters spaced behind the line, and Dirk's man is reluctant to leave him uncovered. And this wasn't a factor on every play, but it's a kind of latent value that gave Dallas
100%.
more
Everybody's just staying glued to
breathing
him.
room than most offenses.
Is that Haywood?
We can see just how much Dirk's gravity and solid passing decisions helped his teammates by looking at their scoring numbers with him off versus on the floor. Most of the other primary Mavs were far more efficient when he was on the court.
Look at all of the guards.
Subtle effects on every possession. And just like Nash helped his big men in two-man actions, Dirk helped his guards.
Wow.
He didn't spike the team's shot quality quite as much as Nash, but this is a pretty incredible track record over the course of a decade. Dirk's off-ball game paired perfectly with dynamic guards because he was so good at capitalizing on these actions when the ball
And again,
hit.
if you're late, there's no even reason to like pump and go. You got a wide open mid-range, you're going to knock it down.
Teams were worried about that shot, so he'd attack a recovering defender off the dribble instead.
There he pumped and
and he had a great feel for punishing a closeout by taking it all the way to the rim, or he could catch and go right into a pull-up from the mid-range. This is yet another area where the threat of his shot unlocked an extra way to attack opponents. And he was great at driving as he caught it to quickly turn an advantage.
And that's what you got to do. Attack closeout.
Something even better. Those skills fit next to so many ball handlers. A shooter like Terry draws defenders, so he kicks to Dirk for the jumper. But a great passer like Kidd can feed him in his sweet spots, and then when help comes, reset so Dirk can catch off the drive for a big layup. This one puts it all together, where Nowitzki and Kidd play a two-man game of hot potato. That starts to strain the defense, and when they worry about Dirk, Kidd can fake it into a drive and use his passing to find someone else.
That possession was kind of ugly. I know it worked, but like, can Kidd just shoot the layup?
The key to this is how quickly Nowitzki attacks off ball. He's slower in isolation, working to draw help and create this advantage, but when it comes back to him, it's a fast attack off 1 or 2 dribbles, gets to a sweet spot, and
man, Dirk don't got much offense around him. I'd shoot it too.
Finishes.
What are we doing?
Another approach in off-ball spots was to take one dribble and pass on the move. And he clearly developed the intention to act quickly and decisively attacking closeouts in catch-and-go situations. He didn't do it a ton because he was such a big scorer, but I think his best passes came in these off-ball spots where he goes right into
because these are really easy passes for the most part.
And then if he sees extra bodies, he knows there's a pass available.
That is not an easy pass, but some.
Here's a nice example where LA sends extra defenders, so he quickly looks cross-court for the opening, and that's a great skip.
Extra pass. Great.
And this translates to his version of short roll passing, with a dribble and change of sides to find the shooter.
I mean, he literally could have thrown it to anybody right there.
When we look at multi-year stretches of playoff performance, Dirk was part of a very good Dallas offense at the beginning of the decade with Steve Nash. Although they were still really good in the 400 minutes Nowitzki was off the court. That was
they
an
both were pretty good as far as
offensively heavy team that took out a loaded Kings squad in 2003 to make the Western Finals, only to play San Antonio to a near draw when Dirk was on the floor before he went down with an injury in Game 3. After Nash went to Phoenix, Dallas put more defenders.
Man, injuries ruined so many great playoffs. It's just sad.
Around Dirk. And from
I hate
2006
that,
to
man.
2008, those offenses weren't quite as good, but the drop-off when Dirk went to the bench was
that's
far
ridiculous.
more significant.
That's ridiculous.
That team
drop
of
off.
Jason Terry and slashers like Josh Howard came within 2 games of the title, actually outscoring Miami with Dirk on the court and losing all 3 close games in the series by just a combined 6 points. Finally, from
Look at Pat
2009 to
Riley.
2011, the Mavs' playoff offenses jumped back
That's
up
and,
while
and,
relying
and eye test shows it, man.
even more on Nowitzki's presence
my
to warp
gosh.
the court.
That difference is ridiculous, man. It's ridiculous.
That was the most complete offensive version of Dirk, so defenders like Tyson Chandler and Sean Marion could fit next to shooters, while a trio of guards benefited from Dirk's pick-and-pop gravity. And I think a reason he had so much offensive success for such a long time is because he
Look
was
at,
so
JJ Barea masterclass.
valuable without the ball, almost like a post-oriented version of Reggie Miller, who made the game easier for so many teammates.
And that's what even with Steph Curry, that's his best attribute is gravity.
And for my money, all that scoring, shooting, and perimeter gravity made Dirk Nowitzki one of the greatest offensive players to ever play. To support
Now, my thing is this with Dirk,
This
right? My thing is this with Dirk, right? When you compare him to some of the other offensive legends, he did it differently. He's a big man that played kind of like I don't know, an off-ball role, but he could post up. He's just such a great shooter, man. That's really what made Dirk so great. For everybody that says like, oh, the Dirk is the best shooting big man of all time. Not the best three-point big man shooter, but best just overall shooter, just because of his mid-range game and the pressure that it put on opposing defenses. Let me know your thoughts on Dirk down below in the comments. Where does he rank, even compared to a guy like Steve Nash, who is the better offense player? Let me know. Drop a like on the video, subscribe if you're new, and as always, man, I love you guys. Have a blessed day.